All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving deep into C.S. Lewis's incredible allegory, The Great Divorce. Now, this is a story that completely flips the script on heaven and hell. It suggests that they aren't places you're just sent to, but destinations you choose. And that choice? Well, it has absolutely massive significance. So, our journey kicks off right here with the very first line of the book. Lewis just drops us, bam, right into this bleak, rainy, endless twilight city he calls the Gray Town. Picture this. It's always dusk, always damp, and it's just packed with these grumbling, argumentative people who are waiting in a line. But for what? Honestly, they don't even seem to know. But here's the thing, this isn't really a city you'd find on a map. No, it's more like a state of mind, you know? The people there, they're so wrapped up in themselves, so argumentative, that they just keep moving away from each other. They use their imagination to build these new empty houses farther and farther apart until the town stretches for light years. It's basically a giant monument to ever-expanding loneliness. Wild, right? And then, right into the middle of this dreary scene, something totally impossible shows up. It's this magnificent golden bus, just blazing with light. It's offering an excursion, a trip somewhere, anywhere else. And of course, the grumbling passengers, they see something that might be limited, and what do? They immediately start fighting and shoving to get on board. And just like that, the journey begins, heading up, 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 leaving that endless gray town far, far below. Okay, so the bus doesn't just go up, it arrives. It touches down in this vast, vibrant country that's just soaked in the light of a sunrise that never moves. This place, it's a place of intense, almost shockingly beautiful reality. And this is where our narrator realizes something truly terrifying. He and all the other visitors from the Gray Town, they're transparent. They're basically ghosts. And this new land, everything, the grass, the flowers, the water, is so incredibly solid, so real, that it's actually painful to touch. The grass feels like walking on diamonds, and a single leaf is described as being heavier than a sack of coal. Just imagine that. So this really sets up the core contrast of the whole story, right? On one hand, you've got the Gray Town, this phantom world people build for themselves, totally unreal and empty. And on the other, you have the solid land, a world of pure substance and joy that's just given as a gift. It's really the difference between living in a prison you built for yourself and experiencing ultimate reality. And this is where the real story kicks in. You see these solid, shining people, the actual inhabitants of this land, come down from the mountains to meet the ghostly visitors. And they come with this simple, absolutely mind-blowing offer. Just stay. Stay, and you can become solid too. All this joy can be yours forever. So the first ghost we meet is this guy called the Big Man, and he's immediately confronted by someone he knew on Earth, a murderer. In fact, a murderer the Big Man himself employed. But here, that murderer is a solid spirit, and the Big Man, he is absolutely outraged. How can this possibly be fair? And right here, we see the tragedy of his choice. The Big Man is so completely consumed with what he thinks are his rights that he just flat out rejects this free offer of pure joy. He literally prefers holding on to his grudge over accepting reality. He'd rather grumble about fairness than receive a gift. And in the end, he just stomps all the way back to the bus. Okay, next up, we meet an Episcopal ghost. He's a theologian, a very intellectual type. And for him, the whole idea of heaven, a place with final, concrete answers, is, well, it's a little bit stifling. He really enjoys the debate, the speculation, the journey of the mind, as he calls it. Yeah, he prefers the free play of the mind over what he calls eternal fact. So when he's faced with a very truth he supposedly spent his entire life seeking, what does he do? He turns away. And you're not gonna believe why. He says he has to get back to the Gray Town to prepare a paper for his theological society so they can continue to discuss God instead of actually meeting him. He chooses the question over the answer. Wow. So our narrator is understandably pretty confused by all this. And that's when he meets a guide, the great author George MacDonald, who is actually one of C.S. Lewis's personal heroes. And it's MacDonald who finally starts to explain the meaning behind this whole bizarre journey. MacDonald just drops this bombshell. The Gray Town is hell. But, and this is a huge but, it's not a place of fire and pitchforks. It's not some external punishment. It's a state of self-imprisonment. It's what happens when a soul turns inward, shuts itself up, and just keeps shrinking until there's nothing left but its own tiny, miserable dungeon of a mind. And this right here is the central idea of the entire book, and it's summed up in one incredibly powerful sentence. Our eternal destiny, it's not some random assignment. It's the final result of our own persistent choice. We either say to God, "Your will be done," and surrender to joy, or God eventually says to us, "All right, your will be done," and gives us exactly what we demanded, our own self forever. But what does this choice actually look like in practice? Well, MacDonald shows our narrator a powerful, unforgettable example. He points out a ghost who has this little red lizard sitting on his shoulder, constantly whispering in his ear. And this scene is really the climax of the whole book. That lizard, you see, it represents a nagging lust, a sin that the man secretly cherishes. A burning angel comes and offers to kill it, but the ghost has to give his permission, even though he's terrified it will kill him too. You can see this terrible internal struggle, until finally he just screams, "God help me," and gives his consent. The angel crushes the lizard, and in its place, this magnificent golden stallion rises up. The ghost himself is transformed into a solid, glorious man, and he jumps on the horse and rides straight into the mountains of heaven. It's an amazing scene. And what this reveals is something so profound about redemption. See, it doesn't destroy our passions, it liberates them. By killing the twisted, corrupted version of desire, its true intended power is finally unleashed. All that energy that was trapped in lust gets transformed into this incredible divine strength, a pure force for joy. So just as our narrator is starting to wrap his head around all this, MacDonald reveals one last absolutely staggering truth about the nature of reality, right as the dream is about to end. He explains that the gray town, remember that vast, empty, ever-expanding city of hell, is when you compare it to ultimate reality, almost infinitely small. So small, in fact, that an angel could swallow the whole thing and not even notice. I know that sounds completely impossible, right? How can a city that stretches for light years be tiny? But Lewis's logic here is based on this really deep idea about the very nature of good and evil. Think about it like this. Goodness, joy, love, truth, they're substantial, they're real, they add something to the universe. Evil, on the other hand, is just a shadow, a parasite, a void. It's a shrinking into the self. It doesn't have any substance of its own. So, in the grand scheme of reality, it barely even registers. It is, in a word, small. And this is the final, unforgettable message that MacDonald leaves us with. No one is sent to hell. They choose it. It is the ultimate, final expression of free will. And in the end, the gates of hell are locked good and tight, but they're locked from the inside. And as the real sun finally starts to rise over the mountains of heaven, a light so real it feels like it could just annihilate him, our narrator wakes up with a scream. He's back in his study, he's fallen out of his chair. That whole allegorical world is gone, but the truth of it, that remains. So, look, while the story itself might have been a dream, the question it asks is very, very real. Every single day, we face the exact same choice as those ghosts on the bus. Are we going to surrender to something greater than ourselves, or are we going to insist on our own way, shrinking into a little world of our own making? What Lewis's allegory is really telling us is that these tiny daily choices, they aren't tiny at all. They are the very building blocks of eternity.